I work hard. I have a strong work ethic. I'm educated. I speak well. I am not what people expect when they think about the working poor. I am not who they think it is. So when I stand up and I confront that myth of what the working poor looks like, people had to stop and go, oh. There was never a moment when we did not know that as a woman, you do what you want to do. My mom and her circle of friends, oh my goodness, powerhouses. They ran huge government corporations. It was so smooth, so smooth. And I'm like, I want to be like you when I grow up. I was in university, at Bishop's University in the Eastern Townships in Quebec. And I definitely had no intention of having any children. When I was here and had my children. And when they were 9 months old, I packed them up and went back home. Having my children out of wedlock, it was like a 9-day wonder when I came back home with them. And you know, the gossiping and you have some people who can be so mean. It was tough. You do what you have to do. My parents and my family were very supportive of me. And then I started working as a training manager in the hotel industry. There are so few things that you can actually tangibly give to your children. You can give them a sense of right and wrong and morals, and you can give them an education. After that, it's up to them. I decided I needed to bring my children back to Canada to go to high school or in school. They were born very early, and they have some learning disabilities. In Jamaica, if you're not at least average, you are not going to succeed in school. So I knew I had to come back to Canada to put them in school so they could get the help that they needed. So I basically picked 5 small cities within an hour of Toronto. Cambridge was the second place I visited. And just the amazing reaction of the people that I met to give me information, to tell me about things, to tell me where I could go, to take me to places, to say this is where you would go, this is who you need to meet. And I said, you know what? If this is the way people are in this town, my town. So I went home, packed up the kids and moved. Yeah, he's a single dad with 2 babies. Needs the help. I had been an executive manager with Sandals Resorts. I'd been a senior manager with the Wyndham Kingston, which was the premier business hotel at the time. So between the resort and the business, I thought for sure I'd be able to find. No Canadian experience. So, and it was amazing to me. At one point I looked at the lady and go, oh wow, Secretary General stays in your hotel too? Because, it was almost laughable that I could not get a job. They don't value what you've done. And is there racism in that? Yeah, there is. I had another friend who came up with me around the same time. We worked similar work experience. She had a job within a week. The only difference between her and I is that she's white. The thing with racism in Canada is that it's, until recently anyway, it's not overt. There is always some kind of euphemism or some kind of way around it. But it's there. Couldn't get a job, so I ended up going to a temporary agency. Minimum wage data entry, that's what I did. I was lucky enough to get in with a company that then decided that they wanted to hire me. And I worked with them for about 7 years, and that was a good job. Not playing to the skills and knowledge that I had, but at least it was a job that paid decently. Got benefits, bonuses, was able to do a fair amount of overtime. So I was doing well until they decided that they were moving of their jobs overseas. And so we were all made redundant. So now I'm in my 40s. Ageism starts to come into play on top of everything else. So trying to find a job was impossible. And I ended up in retail. Again, your minimum waging, and very disturbing. By that time I had a house and a car, and minimum wage was not going to pay the mortgage. You become very isolated, and then it's easy to cave and not to go anywhere and not to do anything. You don't want to answer the phone, you don't want to talk to anybody, you don't want to, people say, oh, how are you? Fine. you know, because what are you going to say? Oh, well, things are just terrible. I have no heat, I have no light, I have no food, who are you going to tell that to? Why would you tell it to anybody? The embarrassment and the shame. And I ended up losing my house. You fought with everything that you could to try and stave it off and find a way to fix it. But it was a very, very dark time. I was working 5-6 days a week in retail while living in Bridges, because I just couldn't find a place I could afford. And it was awful. The otherism is so strong. That's what I know about living there. People have an instant, idea of what you are from your circumstances. So I was Black, female, and a single mother and not working. And it's just flags everywhere for people. They haven't investigated who I was, what I've done, all the work I've done, that I've taken care of, paid my taxes, I've done everything. And that this is just, a bump in my road has brought me here. But when you're the working poor, any bump will bring you there. I finally did find somewhere to live and moved out and started trying to piece things together again. There are times when I know that I was clinically depressed. I know there's a time when I literally just want to go home and put the covers over my head and not come out. I was very lucky in that I had really amazing friends who would not let me stay there. I had a very strong church family. I go to the Calvary Church on Hesper Road, and they were not willing to leave me there. And they walked that journey with me. I would come home and there would be food on my steps. There was a couple who paid for my internet so that I could go to school. There was a grandma in there who I know looks after her kids, her grandkids. And she gave me $50 every month to pay for my bus pass so that I could go to school. And with this support around me, it stopped me from spiraling. As strong as you can be, some things really can defeat you if you let it. House of Friendship is an amazing organization. And we can do a cost sharing where you could pay half and I could pay half. I love working there. When they offered me the job, I'm like, are you serious? Punking me, are you? I really get the job? Oh, all right. I was so excited. It boosts your confidence. And so when you walk in, you're ready. So we have to practice. You ready?
Ready.
Come on. So we're up. And we're going to do our Superman pose. What's your best Superman pose besides? I think sometimes when they can look and say, well, if you can do it, I can do it. And so they can find it in themselves to go, yes, I can. Sometimes you sit there with the Superman thing. Come on, Superman with me. I am fearfully and wonderfully made and I can do it. Just imagine the cape is floating off your back, which means that you have to have it really high because I am the best. Let me hear you.
I am the best.
Louder than that.
I am the best.
That's right. How does that make you feel?
Good.
Doesn't it? That's exactly what you got to do. Just 5 minutes before you go in. It feeds me. Yes, there are days when you're at home crying and eating chocolate because chocolate is the answer to everything. But the amazing feeling when you know that you got through to somebody or somebody is on a path to change, to really make something different in their lives. There's no feeling like that in the world. There's some things that I see that just, I am so angry beyond belief with some things, and just the inhumanity of things. And once again, the otherism, you know, I'm in awe some days that people can even have a thought in their head like that. But then I watch that more and more people are standing up and saying no. So this is how we have people living here in Cambridge, here in Ontario, in Canada. We have people who this is how they live. We have nowhere for these people to go. We have one shelter which is full to the brim every day. This is what happens. Where do they go? They have nowhere to go. We also have people with addictions. And it's hard to house people with addictions, especially if they're not getting the support that they need. What do? This is not acceptable. This is not how people would live. What happens when it rains? What happens when it gets too cold? What happens when there's a storm? These are people. These are our people. And we should be doing much better in a country like Canada for them. This is not acceptable. Part of why I ran this time was because I represent women. I represent women of color. I represent immigrants. I represent women of a certain age. Boy, was I representing. It's a lot of representing. But people need to be able to look up and see themselves in who is looking out for them. But I had absolutely no idea what it took to run a campaign and how brutal it is. I mean, it's really physically challenging in a lot of ways, and mentally challenging, and emotionally challenging, because you will not believe how mean people get. It was quite the ride. It was crazy. It was exhausting, and moments of high highs and low lows. But at the end of the day, I'm glad I did it. And it just means that I need to stay more engaged.
Got my vote next time.
A tear is never wasted, not even one. Because everything I've been through, as bad as it could have been, it has made me what I am. It's made me to be able to work where I work. It's made me be able to understand who I serve. It's made me be able to say, yes, I will run for Parliament because I know where we need to take legislation, because I understand what that is.